regardless of where it ultimately ends up, I think maybe some people are being too optimistic, maybe we're not being optimistic enough, but it is very clear to me that it has been funny to me to see the timeline change. I feel maybe because I was a bit more disconnected this week, I guess my thinking was like maybe I'm not fully up to date on really where the pulse of the market is and sentiment is, because it felt very out of left field to me to see people so bearish
Yeah,
here.
it's crazy.
And
But honestly, I think the surprising thing to me, you see the like random Twitter accounts always just like flipping with like a 1% gain or 1%, drawdown or something. But what was surprising this week was like, some of the like people who I actually trust their opinions of like suddenly became bearish somehow out of left field. I don't know if it was kind of economic data or what it was, but
I mean, I think
I'm not a macro guy. Yeah.
The macro seems to be continuing to play a big role here. So I guess that's the justification for it. Stronger economy means markets go down.
Raul yesterday said we're still in the banana zone, so that's all I needed to hear.
I really got to figure out what he actually means by that. I'm a big fan of bananas, and so I was like, cool, I dig that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. You see enough of these sort of cycles play out. I guess it's fair to always question whether they'll play out in a similar way. But I mean, you've been caught on the wrong side of that the last 3 times. You're probably going to be NGMI this time, so that's kind of where my money is.
For sure.
Anyways,
I mean, the annoying thing is, even if you like have that perspective and have been through it, the like Twitter sentiment still fucking like impacts you.
You just gotta not. I mean, Twitter is just not a place for useful
borrowing.
Insights right now.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not sentiment borrowing. Yeah, the yappers yapping.
Yeah.
Especially now, given I think like this. I was thinking about just like the impact that the Twitter algorithm sort of changes, and everybody feeling like they're sort of having a hard time getting reach, and then therefore shifting how they show up on that platform has on things like sentiment. And it's
totally.
chasing the new thing becomes more and more important to ensure that the algorithm gets your thing. And so I'm sure we'll get into that in some way here in this list. So yeah, I mean, what else, anything else in your mind before we jump in?
No, I mean, thinking of the LA people. So anyone that's in LA or had to flee, like, it's a brutal situation, and our hearts are with you.
Dude, I mean,
imagine.
It is wild just how. I mean, I see these sort of natural disasters happen all over the place, and I mean, I guess in the eastern seaboard was a more recent one. I don't have a whole lot of connection to people over there, but to LA, it was like a process of realizing how many more people were there, and even some folks hitting pretty close to home. So shout out to, I mean, what a tough thing to go through. There's some folks in the C Club world that have been heavily impacted from it. So glad to hear that they're safe. But I mean, I just can't even imagine what that is like. And I think the stories that we'll hear over the next little while are going to continue to drive that home. So, I mean, good reminder of like what matters really. It's usually not this bullshit that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, totally.
Right down to it. So
totally. Yeah, I mean, let's jump into it. So we were supposed to have Kayvon on. I think got our wires crossed, and he ended up having kind of an all hands meeting in probably one of the more important weeks that they've had in recent memory. So he had to he couldn't join. We're also going to bring Matthew Fox on, who's building Pixelmon, and kind of similar story there. A bunch of pickup yesterday, shit's breaking left and right, and he's just like,
this is the challenge in us being like, we want to talk to people who are like in the middle of a thing that's really taken off or about to take off, and had that happen a few times. So just us today. That's fine.
Yeah, just us. We're chilling. But yeah, still wanted to kind of kick off talking about kind of NFT platforms and looking at the success Rodeo has had. Kind of just like tease out some of the differences between Rodeo and Zora, and maybe why kind of Rodeo is starting to see this pickup. And then I think have seen some people kind of calling, suggesting that the agent stuff or whatever the current meta is gonna be short lived, and people are gonna rotate back to NFTs, which I don't necessarily believe. So I think
tough for me
that's
to
kind of an
see,
interesting conversation to have too. So
yeah.
Maybe starting off, Sterling, do you want to pull up the Rodeo data? I think it's the other Dune dashboard I dropped there. So they I don't know why it's like suddenly happening, but this week, I think,
You.
they've had quite a bit of kind of sustained usage from, a small kind of core group of people who have, really liked the product. But for some reason over the last, like, I mean, really this week, but over the last kind of 2 weeks, it's really seemed to start capturing some mind share within crypto Twitter, and, seeing a lot of people who, were kind of long time Zora users or just NFT minters start to kind of go there and start play around with the platform and mint their first things there. So I have no insight into like why now, but I have been playing around with it a bit, and I think it seems to me like actually like through my own experience, like the thing that is kind of differentiating what Rodeo is versus what Zora is like they're leading much harder into the like existing social graphs that exist. So they're kind of like more strictly kind of bootstrapping your Rodeo graph off of Farcaster data. So when you go there and open the product and scroll through it versus opening Zora and scrolling through it, like you're seeing a lot more of your friends or like people that your acquaintances and know kind of posting content there. And I posted a few things for the last 2 days, and like pretty quickly we're getting a bunch of people I know collecting my stuff, which doesn't actually happen to me on Zora. I think the discovery there, like the friend discovery there, hasn't seemed as effective to me. So I think that seems like a big reason for it. I think the dynamics or like the product still feels pretty similarly. They don't have like the liquid secondary markets and stuff that Zora does, but UI UX feels pretty Instagram like. And I don't know, I think generally I just like continue to be excited by the opportunity for kind of a like community owned, like economically focused Instagram. Like that just feels like a thing that should pretty obviously exist. And I think the vast majority of people, if it continues growing and gets a pretty reasonable audience, I think the vast majority of people will still just like follow, like consume. But even if like 1% of people are actually collecting, like that could be pretty financially rewarding for anyone with a meaningful audience. So I think it's a kind of fun market to go after.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, starting when we scrolled up a little bit there, I think it looked like, I wonder who this top revenue for, not referrals, but looked like there's one account that had a lion's share of their revenue that was kind of coming from it, right? So are we still, is this driven by large creators coming in and using it, or are we seeing some long tail stuff work here?
A lot of long tail stuff. It seems like there's way less like zeros than there are on Zora. Like most posts I was finding from people have like 5 to like 100 collects, just as you would kind of see that on Instagram. I think obviously Shlomes was in there, got a ton of mints. I think there's been some like of course people using it as like ways to launch new meme coins and kind of experimenting with like kind of doing like the pre-sale mechanic on this, or like bootstrapping kind of early communities for things on this. But it seems to me like it's more of just kind of like long tail kind of collecting. Also, the raw numbers are still way smaller than Zora. Like it's orders of magnitude less, like daily active users and mints and collects and stuff. So still very very early. But I don't know, when you see charts like that, you pay attention.
For sure. I mean, the team's been, right, here we go. So top posters we have. So
okay, so
Jack is in here, and so there's, I guess it's kind of what you'd expect to see. Like, I mean, that's I don't know what that first account is there at 89, but like, so I think that's really what I'm looking for here, right? Is like, we've seen, I think even in Zora, and I'm assuming here, though I haven't dove into the data super closely here, that a lot of like the energy or like the metrics are driven by a few big accounts that come in and make use of a new sort of space, and there's so much value in being early. And then I think the question is just like, how much does that scale? And do you see, is there that same sort of discoverability opportunity and distribution opportunity that can attract the sort of next wave of folks, right? Because I think I think you probably have the link that from Aaron Wright that was making the argument that AI agents are sort of like the hot thing right now, but it's going to fade, and NFTs are going to be the next thing. And I think that's an interesting thing to sort of think about, right? Because the big driver of the NFT boom in the last while was this gold rush of opportunity that led to creators coming into it, and it was that really driven by the fact that there was like this 1000x opportunity, in being early, and I think in many ways what we've seen in meme coins and with AI agents right now, we've seen that dynamic emerge, and I'm not sure we're seeing that in anything that's happening in the NFT space right now. And so if you're sort of thinking that the speculative demand is really driving early market potential here, and that might lead to some sort of ongoing business opportunity or economic engine. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen that in NFTs, whether that is from the Zora perspective or a Rodeo perspective. I'm not sure that's essential here, but I think the way the market structure exists, it seems like these sort of app focused NFT mentors that have like very sort of strong, very opinionated sort of structures are limiting a lot of that potential, novelty or innovation that could drive sort of like the larger speculative demand. So, but
Yeah,
I think the trade
I
off
don't
is
buy.
that this thing
Yeah.
goes on longer and is more sustainable because of it.
Yeah, I don't really buy. I don't buy this at all. Like I think NFTs as like speculative assets were just so obviously caught in this like uncanny valley where like whales couldn't properly like size into stuff, and then also things that did
Mm.
like run, a lot of people pretty quickly got priced out. So I think they're just like fundamentally way worse kind of ownership assets or like speculative assets than fungible tokens are. But I think them not having to play that role is actually great for them,
Mm.
because
Mm.
then they can just go and be the like, social signaling, kind of belonging, sense of identity tools that they're actually just like much better suited to do without having to like get like blended in with all the like speculative games that fungible tokens can go do. So I think I very much like believe NFTs are gonna like come back, but I think they'll not come back in like the speculative form that they came back in before. But I think projects will just, like Seed Club PFPs could make a lot of sense, right? Like we saw AI16Z partner, NFTs. We saw, Hyperliquid NFTs. Like I think they can just play these like kind of distinct and carved out roles in these ecosystems without needing to play the speculative games that ultimately kind of like diminish their value as like identity and kind of social tools.
Well, so there's also this, art NFTs. I think that'll have a
For sure.
staying power too. And so, if we think about Rodeo, where does that fit in these two worlds? Where one, it's sort of like is there still this sort of patronage type of mentality, or are people collecting on Rodeo because of like, is it purely a social game, or because I think part of the timeline that I did check in on where people were talking about the speculative opportunity on Rodeo that I think was driving some of this early usage, though I didn't dive into it too deeply, so I might be mischaracterizing that.
No, I mean I'm sure people are playing that game. They have some of the similar kind of Zora dynamics where if you collect something and then people see it in the feed because you collected it, like you get a share of those the like
Okay.
rewards. Obviously, you posting stuff earns you money, so people are playing that game. I do think there's there is a secondary market, and some of the kind of early posts that maybe had less supply that now that there's more usage on Rodeo are kind of trading at a premium. So there's obviously is a speculative game to play there, which I think is good. It's a part of the kind of core value prop of these things having markets. But
We should
at
get
least
Aaron
my
on and get
experience
him
on
to.
it is much more like, to me, like the killer why collect is like I want to support, like I know Jess and I like this post and I just want to support him and toss him 30 cents as a result. So I think
Oh, thanks,
leaning
Josh.
leaning into like the social graph and me having my social graph being based on people I actually know and care about versus just seeing like a like feed of kind of like depersonalized art just feels like the way that this is actually going to become the like on-chain Instagram.
I'm really trying to think when the last time I minted an NFT was. I know the last time I really wanted to buy an NFT was that Joe P's drop,
Yeah.
which gives
Yeah.
it sort of legitimacy in the art world as far as I'm concerned. But
There's actually a
uh,
pretty nice one today by Petra. You see that? Petra Voice or something. Certainly maybe
okay,
you can find it on Twitter. That was like one that I like. But yeah, I think I minted chonks from our that I think we talked about was Derek from our friend Backseats, which was
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, it was like collecting stuff on. I like posted something on Rodeo, got like 10 collects, so I had some money in the Rodeo wallet, and then was like collecting from
I mean, I think
some friends that were creating stuff on there.
that I think is the underrated take here, right? And I think you've been tweeting about it this week. This idea that you know, that I think these sort of Zora and Rodeo sort of worlds have created, where you can create something, earn ETH, and begin to participate
Yeah,
in the
yeah, these
world,
I
right?
like these.
Still becomes, it's still like one of the biggest barriers of getting people in. Is like, how do you actually just get ETH into your wallet? If you can just upload an image, now, I mean, you kind of need friends and you need distribution and yada yada. But I think having starting ETH in a wallet is like
Yeah,
a big unlock.
for sure.
I saw people trying to purchase the passes to ETH Denver, go through the whole loops of trying to buy the stuff with crypto. And I think a reminder of just the
Oh,
absolute shit show that this stuff still is right now. So yeah, those
yeah,
are great. I like those a
yeah,
lot.
these are cool.
And
So
Petra Voice.
I remember this artist. I think we may have talked about it on the show, but like
Yeah.
6 months ago, gotten a bunch of shit because it was like AI art, and people were, I don't know, some like gotten some like AI art kind of bickering match with a bunch of people who like didn't know it was, and then it came out that it was, and then people were mad, and she
Yeah.
was like, "What?" But then these sold out pretty quickly today, so I think people are
Nice.
over it. They look great.
All right. Well, let's get Aaron on in the future here. I would love for him to
Yeah, we
like.
should.
I mean, he's such a. I mean, my take would be that that's bag bias, but I'm not sure that's always a fair characterization of Aaron. He thinks pretty deeply about this sort of stuff, so it would be cool to get him
Yeah,
on to dive in.
I mean, I think betting that like blue chip NFT art appreciates over the course of the cycle is like a pretty easy bet to make.
I mean, literally, most of my thinking around NFTs is me looking at my squiggles and being like, should I sell these things or should I not sell these things?
Yeah, I think you should
So
probably not.
I didn't, and I
You should
won't.
probably not. Yeah,
I just go, oh, yeah. All right.
yeah.
What else
All
we
right,
got?
let's move on.
NFTs. I mean, actually, last thing on this, I love seeing teams. I mean, the Rodeo team has been hyper focused on
Yeah,
their users and kind of just running the playbook of like figure out what people want, build it for them, improve, don't get distracted. So, uh, very cool to see that sort of start to pay off for them.
for sure. I mean, I think it's the only way to, if you're living too much in the present today as a builder, or like trying to chase narratives and hype cycles, you're gonna get
I
nowhere,
mean,
because the like the narrative cycles are shorter than product cycles, so you're always just gonna be behind. So I think the only
100%.
way to actually like exist and withstand this stuff is to have like be living in the future, have an insight into what that future needs, and just be focused on that and not care about what's on the timeline today.
Yet 80% of the things you see are the former, not the latter. So,
I mean, I have that every time I see a new project launching now that's like an AI agent that like wasn't building before all this hype. It's like
no.
you can pretty easily just dismiss this, because like
Yeah.
where were you a year ago if this was a thing that you've actually had conviction in?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually the last thing here maybe is just was kind of looking at OpenSea revenue and fees, and it's kind of come back from the dead,
Okay.
which is probably some reasonable indication that
Look at that blank.
it's crazy, man. Some of those days it's like $1 in fees and revenue. I don't know. It's possible like wasn't reported properly, but I think it probably just.
Holy shit. Can you imagine being on that leadership team trying to navigate that? Like, that's a bear market, baby.
Oof.
And thinking even in May, you're like, oh God, this is bad.
Yeah, and then it literally goes to zero. Yeah,
But a token will save
but
them, right?
a token and NFTs coming back might.
I think the latter is probably the essential piece here.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, we get. I mean, we'll see. Interesting to see.
But it's actually like doing whatever 100K in revenue a day now. Like, it's not
No, I
bad.
mean that's money. That's money.
It's not bad.
I don't know if that justifies our last valuation. We'll see.
What did they raise at?
I mean, very. I don't. I mean, billion plus, probably more.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what their token model is. To me, that's like I mean, the thing that I'm most excited about here is I think this next month and a half, 2 months, we're going to see so many tokens come out
yeah.
and see which ones work. It's going to be good.
$17 of revenue on September 17th. That's huge. It
Yo.
feels like maybe the data stopped reporting properly, but
Yeah, it seems
whatever.
shocking to me that it would be zero, but all right. What
Cool.
else
Let's
we
jump
got?
to this. this smart contract debate. So this was kind of a Twitter discussion between Jesse and the Solana boys. So yeah, really like Jesse's point here is that there seems to be kind of this like clear kind of ideological difference between what Ethereum sees the future of smart contracts being and what Solana sees the future of smart contracts being. And the Solana guys are very anchored on the idea that like we're building a decentralized NASDAQ. We're bringing like financial and capital markets on chain. That only needs 6 smart contracts. That's all we're focused on, and we're going to go build the thing that needs those 6 smart contracts. And I think Jesse's point is that in EVM land there's this perspective that there are like infinite contracts to be built potentially, and markets are like markets broadly, or like global economy broadly, is much larger than just these kind of like core financial capital markets needs. So it's taking the over on there needing to be more than kind of 6 core smart contracts. So have no real input on like the technical debate behind it, but it is an interesting kind of conversation of like I think it's pretty easy to look at the state of crypto today and be like like 99% of like crypto economic activity is swapping, borrowing, lending, staking, like the 6 core kind of like economic contracts. And obviously there's like a huge market and us just bringing, or a huge opportunity and just bringing all the like financial and capital markets happening off chain into those like on chain using those 6 smart contracts. But I think it's a pretty like limited view on the potential of this tech.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like so over these like L1 debates and L2 like it's.
Me too.
And maybe
but
that's because
I
I'm
think
not.
the idea of like it's like, are there in my mind there's a lot of like long term, a lot of compelling like non-financial applications that can benefit from whatever, like trustless execution and global state, like identity and reputation systems and decentralized governance and gaming economies and NFTs and creator royalties and supply chain tracking, or who knows what the hell else like ends up mattering. So I think there's obviously like a power law here, and I would never like bet against the like dominant smart contracts of the future being these like core financial applications. But I think just like only building for those you're gonna miss a bunch of the kind of interesting long tail of innovation.
Yeah, I think like very happy that there are multiple approaches happening here, because I think I wouldn't want to bet against there being novel new use cases that emerge as we sort of push into this more techno optimist future that we're kind of hurtling towards. And at the same time, I think I think Kyle's take here is probably very much an investor's take, which wearing that hat, there's I think there's 3 ways you make money. There are 3 great business models in crypto. It's either the issuance, or being the place where tokens are issued. It's being the transaction flow, or it's being early to new assets that are issued. And I think that is expansive in many ways, as there can be multiple ways that those things sort of show up. But there is a huge opportunity just to go after what is here. And I think from an investor standpoint, you really want to have I think betting on new things emerging need to sort of fit into that framework in some way. And I think that's why we haven't seen reputation or identity, et cetera, really take off outside of there being those sort of dynamics where, ENS as an identity layer, really is driven by the fact that there's speculation on namespace and et cetera. And so you're at the issuance of tokens. So I guess they're both probably right, and very happy that there is it is funny to me to see that most of the, innovation still comes from EVM land. I think that's probably comes from the dynamic of people trying to make new things. And I think Solana really is about optimization and efficiency and effectiveness, which is incredibly important for broader consumer type of products, etc. So my whole take here is it's just great that we have a ton of smart people that are pushing at these new and different things. And ultimately,
it's also great that we just live at the application layer.
This is the thing, right? I just don't think it matters that much in the long run.
No, agreed.
Like
I do think I like Jesse's take here, though. I think pretty much what we were talking about, where he's just like, yes, but also it's pretty unimaginative. Yeah, and like who knows? And like, why would you? Like as an investor, like you have to take the over on that. Like you got to fucking stay open minded. You can't just kind of close yourself off and think that the present is the future.
Yeah, No, I mean, yes, I think that's true, but I think there is still a lot of imagination to be had in those six contracts.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing because I think a lot of there's being overly optimistic in new types of smart contracts, economic models emerging, and there being new types of value. I think has not been the most efficient way to return capital over the last little while, and so you sort of have to look at like, I mean, that I think we often say what gets funded gets built, right? And
Yeah.
so it's fair to think that there are other things out there that I think could be valuable that maybe most investors aren't seeing right now, but it is further out on the risk curve for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this next
Cool.
topic is really easy to get into, and I totally know
It's
everything about. So,
it's an easy one. It's an easy one. Yeah. No. So I don't know. I've just been following Alexander Good for a while, and he's one of the more like kind of out there thinkers on the impacts of AI and where like the intersection of crypto and AI is going to happen. And wrote a great post on agentic protocols like a year or two ago, way before this stuff was happening, about how
hmm
whatever kind of like real predicting a lot of, I guess, what we're starting to see the early innings of now. So I listened to this conversation that he had with Thread Guy today, and I think there are just like a few really like useful things to pull out here. One is this idea that he shared about hallucination yield, and really like his thesis behind that is that as more and more people start using LLMs as their like source of discovery or like the front door to the internet, building things that like appeal to LLMs is going to be very, very important. So he kind of came up with this idea of hallucination yield, which is ultimately like the delta between the market cap of a project, the actual market cap of a project, and the market cap of and the market cap that the LLM thinks that project should have. So he talks about an example where I think maybe 6 months a while ago he was talking to the I think it was ChatGPT or maybe Claude about the about virtuals, and like shared the white paper, shared the virtual site, and asked it what market cap it thinks virtual should have, and I think it like consistently was saying between $7 and $12 billion. Uh, and this was when it was like basically nothing. So he bought a bunch and did
holy
really well
shit.
from that. He also talked about an example where he actually has this deep background working at a hedge fund, and he would basically like run like test ads for companies that he was thinking about investing in to get like a really real sense of what their like cost of acquisition would be and how
mm.
that compares between different companies to kind of inform investment decisions. And he also talked about doing this with Pepe, and like pretty early on versus like a bunch of other kind of early meme coins that were emerging, and pretty early on just saw how much more affinity these LLMs had for Pepe versus other ones, and ultimately like placed a big bet on that and did really well too.
Oh
So I think
man.
it's it's I don't know. I just find it a really interesting concept. He talked a bit about like the deep affinity that these LLMs have for like Bitcoin, XRP, Link, like all the things that like really dominated the internet
Right.
forums that ultimately like these LLMs were trained on. So you could see if you know adoption of these things goes through the roof. People are asking these LLMs what cryptocurrencies they should buy. Like those are the ones that they're probably going to tell people to buy. So it's like both. It's kind of out
Hmm.
there and like probably maybe a bit early to like really hang your hat on, but I think it's hinting at a pretty important uh like thing that people are going to need to build for in the future.
That's a lot of hair in our face there, Sterling. Um, uh, that is absolutely fascinating. I think last week we talked about the sort of I guess dominance of capital, or the argument that one post was making about how capital was just going to be so dominant in this AI world, and it's interesting to think about how historical or archival affinity will
Mm-hmm.
play into this new world. And I think so many. I mean, I'll maybe talk for myself. It was shocking to me to see, and I've said many times, to see what the top 100 projects are and just how many of them are there just because they've always been there.
Yeah.
It's Link, it's ADA, it's XRP, etc. And then to see how much takeoff they've had as sort of the early part of this bull market has kicked off. Um, And I think a lot of that is because of the liquidity, both from a mindshare perspective and a practical liquidity perspective, to see how that sort of manifests through these LLMs. I mean, I think the idea of if it's not written down, it doesn't exist in this world is very, very real. And it's a big reason why, I think I have a recorder in every single call, and, we're trying to capture all these thoughts, and I talk to my phone more than I ever have, etc. But I also wonder if I'm just not doing that enough. And I
Yeah,
mean, like the information warfare here is going to be pretty wild, especially as these things get trained at a sort of a point in time, right? And so there's almost like an arms race for attention and sentiment and et cetera, that to be
totally.
captured in a text based way, so that these things can kind of learn and know about it. And I mean,
Yeah.
from what we
And
know, we haven't even seen all the data from YouTube come into these things as part of being trained yet. So there's like,
yeah.
oh man, that's
Well,
fascinating.
and you're like, you're talking about it from like the personal perspective of like how do I set myself up today for like these LLMs to like know who I am in the future, or like for me to be able to train them. But also, if you like believe that this future's coming, and like in 2 years everybody's going to be constantly talking to these LLMs, like the best thing you can do for your project today is like, how do I have a ton of content about what we're building in all the
Yeah.
places that think these things are potentially going to get trained on?
Yeah. So there was a great, I've been listening to the Dwarkesh podcast quite a bit.
Mm,
I think he's doing a phenomenal job at, like, I mean, God, all these guys. I just love feeling like the dumbest person in the room. Like, and that's what the internet for me is today, right now. I'm just like, what is? Let's go. And he had Tyler Cowen on for a talk most
mm,
recently here, and Tyler's basically makes the argument that humans are the huge bottleneck to AI, and that we're not going to see this rapid growth from AI that most people are arguing for right now, because of all of the limitations that human beings and our governance and decision making process, et cetera, sort of bring. And it sort of makes an argument of like, okay, go into like a even a Stanford curriculum building sort of, or I guess council of some sort, and try to and see what sort of the decision making process is there on how you bring AI, or even how you make a course on AI, or all these sort of things that still have to go through like these rather archaic decision making processes we have. As what sort of one example for the limitations that these models are ultimately going to face. And so I think he makes the argument that there's a lot of places where we'll probably see much more rapid adoption, where there's a lot less regulation, and where there's more information, and probably financial markets will be one of those things. Um, but I think makes a pretty compelling argument for why we might be a little overhyped. Can we mute that? Yeah. Delete. But why we might not. I mean, I think in these moments, it's very easy for everybody to get over excited. Like, you sort of have to assume we're in some sort of level of bubble thinking. I don't think that means that you should discount it fully. I think, taking the over is probably always the smart play here, as long as you're being responsible with how you're making your bets. But uh, I recommend people listen to that if you want to sort of have a balanced opinion on just how fast this stuff
yeah.
is coming. And maybe that does follow into like the other point you were trying to make here with this podcast.
Yeah, the
You know, is
yeah.
AI for crypto, or crypto for AI?
Right. So that was another thing he talked about quite a bit, was suggesting that so much of like the AI crypto intersection right now is trying to like treat crypto as the holy grail and like shove AI into it. So, you see that with decentralized compute and whatever AI blockchains and blah blah blah, all this stuff. And so far those have just proven to have like very little demand, even when they're, useful and theoretically could compete. And the point he makes is actually what we should, AI is like the massive runaway innovation here, and really what the approach we should be taking with AI with respect to crypto is like figuring out how to leverage AI to make crypto better. So that's, you know, uh, I think a lot of this agentic stuff is a part of that, but like AI front ends, how do we put AI in the center of DAOs and improve human coordination and blah 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 blah
Yeah,
blah. And that's actually core. So he's building post fiat, which is kind of this like investing network that's trying to like you know aggregate a bunch of kind of human alpha and human intelligence and create kind of the economic incentives for everyone to share that and win together. He talks a lot about how the like most edge that humans have today is going to disappear. A lot of it's like analytics, obviously like information asymmetry is a big piece of it, but as as like these, as AI just gets better and better at kind of consuming all this information and, you know, making decisions off of it, like a lot of that edge is going to go away. And the really like the only edge that humans have going forward will be kind of their like collective knowledge and decision making. So building kind of these, you know, economic structures and networks that can kind of move together as humans is kind of the best way to kind of maintain our human edge and, you know, maintain human relevancy in this kind of future economic world we're moving towards.
Do you have to go buy a token on XRP? Geez, that's a whole.
Dude,
How do you even find the
I
price on
want to
that
see
damn
what
thing?
he's building so bad, but I just have not been able to overcome the mental barrier of having to fucking figure out how to onboard onto XRP. It is wild that that's where he's deciding to build on, but he has reasons for it.
I mean, I love it. Frankly, I absolutely love it. Be a weird place
Yeah.
where you're like the main thing rather than trying to fight with everybody else.
I mean, his point is it's like proven. It's like proven infrastructure, you know, on off ramps everywhere, kind of very integrated, you know, throughout the
I mean,
economies of the world.
it's
Korea
in the
loves
traditional
it.
banking
Yeah,
system in a way
it's in
that
the
I think
traditional banking
most.
system.
Yeah,
I think
fascinating. All right, that's
yeah,
one I got to dive into.
yeah, you should. I just recommend everyone listen to that because it's mind bending.
Nice. I've been thinking a lot about this sort of agentic stuff recently, and haven't fully been able to like articulate the thoughts. But to me, it feels like we're in this moment right now where we're really focused on the agents being the thing in the narrative, but really what people seem to be valuing from an investment perspective are the networks. And
Right.
so I feel like we're going to shift to much more of like the discussion and value and sort of focus being on networks where agents are participating rather than the agents themselves. And even the agents that do win will likely become networks. So I was looking at the virtuals launchpad today, and there's sort of, the power laws there are very real, right? You have AXBT up at $450 million market cap or something, and then Luna at like a 70, and then everything else really far below. And I think even looking at some of the stuff that's come out of the AI16Z launchpad, you're really not seeing a lot of those actual things sort of be valued in the market. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like really we should be looking for where the networks that are going to be able to really leverage these things more than the
Totally.
things themselves. And it seems like we're
Agreed.
still in very early innings that this model specifically is going to be the way it wins, right? Where you just sort of have a launch pad
Yeah.
where there's a lot of incentive for people to launch new things, and even if they go up to $1 million, it's a good outcome for the early launchers here. But in the grand scheme of things, right, there really
Yeah.
are just purely like one or two that are kind of breaking out. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
game.
I
I
think it's
forgot.
like the like Cognico opportunity we talked about, I think last week. I also think I tweeted earlier this week and actually got a little deeper into it with a conversation with the fungi guys. But I think like agent marketplaces is actually like a much more interesting like framing and opportunity to go after than launch pads, because I think I fully agree that these agents as standalone things are not that interesting. But if you build this like managed marketplaces of agents in, let's say it's whatever, trying to like make DeFi, more accessible and easier to use. And, you build the rails, you build a consumer application, and then anyone can ultimately like launch an agent into that has whatever, a risk tolerance, maybe like a preference for certain chains. It has a certain personality and can kind of just like be a part of this, like this network and holistic consumer product that has like the right rails in place and right experiences in place to kind of just like be useful or like a part of this bigger thing. I think that gets way more interesting than just the like launch pad, and then this agent needs to figure out how to go be its own thing.
Yeah, I mean we're in the meme coin meta for agents, and then the question is, where's the enduring model here for individual agents? And I think that's maybe part of what I'm arguing for from a network perspective. But the
Totally.
marketplace from a launch pad, like the difference there being that you're bringing specific utilities to the table, or
Yeah, I think
maybe I don't
like
fully understand.
so the launch pad is like this is the place that agents launch, capital formation, but then they're expected to go like create value elsewhere, right? It's like AIXBT is building a Twitter following and it needs to figure out how to become economically sustainable and whatever, versus like the marketplace is like I'm coming to Fungi, or like I'm coming to this product because I want a DeFi agent, and I'm going to choose the one within this marketplace of options that or a few within this marketplace of options that serves my purposes, and then like the product is built for it to actually be useful. There's
Right.
economic,
Okay.
there's like revenue sharing. So it's like you know, like a single home. Like Airbnb is not like a home launch pad, right? It's a home marketplace that actually just makes,
That could be cool.
yeah,
Home launch pads.
a home launch pad.
Yeah, I get it. Cool. I love this next post from Yancey, man. Like, God, I love this guy.
It's so good. It's so, and I think I missed it when he wrote. I think he wrote it like mid last year. And the thing that reminded me of it was this table, which I read, and I was just like, yeah. Uh, so really, so this post individualism post that he writes kind of walks through just like the history of individualism. So it talks about how thousands of years ago there was like or like a thousand AD. There's like very little sense of the individual. It was all about what family you belong to, what clan you belong to. Ultimately, the Christian church came in and kind of talked about the empowerment of the individual. Ultimately, like banned cousin marriages, so really broke down these like existing power systems, and ultimately that led to like the creation of cities and the creation of universities and the creation of guilds and all these stuff that like, and then we've been on this like march of just empowering the individual and like growing individualism ever since. And talks about just how the internet has obviously taken that to an absolute extreme where you can now be anybody on the internet. You can be many different types of yourself on the internet, and we know all the kind of implications of that. And really, he's suggesting that we're actually now kind of moving into this like post individual world where everyone is kind of re-looking for ways to find belonging and be a part of bigger things and try to and kind of like make sense of their individuality within the context of something bigger. So it's a great post and recommend reading it. But I think that the table that he shared there really just like highlights, I think, the important pieces of it. So, the source of power in like pre-individualism was like clans and bloodlines, and then it moved to, capital and politics and institutions, and then kind of in post-individualism, obviously capital still reigns supreme, but it's like capital and communities instead of these like kind of like government or whatever, like large institutions. And then, social structure, it's moving to like internet native groups, and religious beliefs, it's moving to like self and the network. And, I think when he talks through it, like it took like centuries for like non-individualism to kind of become individualism. So it's obviously going to take time for this to evolve and happen. But I think it added a lot of really good language and like storytelling to what we talk a lot about, just like the opportunity to like build something people want to be a part of, build things people want to participate in, want to own, give them economic upside in it. And, he talks about kind of the 21st century being one of the corporation, and and like looking forward, it's going to be kind of more about like these internet native groups and collectives. And just, I don't know, I just loved it. It was kind of pumping our bags on a lot of what we were excited about and talking about.
Networked organizations. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you sort of feel the tension here in real time with some of the political discussions that are happening right now. And the, I think specifically, the loneliness, the key challenge being living wage and alienation into loneliness and mental health. That seems to really click. And then the sort of weaknesses or sort of zero sum competition into in groups and out groups. And because I think I was thinking about the primary political discourse in, I think, the United States and in Canada, probably actually more so around the world, is one that is playing off of this populism, which is a very individualistic sort of take. But then in his framing here with the sort of in groups and out groups, it kind of is maybe a more appropriate way of describing it, right? We're sort of through the filter bubbles and through sort of the affinity groups that we find ourselves in and the media that we consume, you sort of really feel this us versus them type of dynamic. But it still feels like that is still coming from more of an individualist, weighted perspective. Maybe not. I don't know. That's interesting. I gotta think about that a bit more. This is my favorite. Yancey's my favorite guy to talk to, just because
he's just
twists
thought
my
about
brain
this stuff so
and
deeply.
sort of
Yeah.
things. Oh man, yeah.
Well, there's a good quote in it where he talks about, he's like, you're never gonna put the individual back in the bottle, and that's like not what post-individualism is. It's more about just contextualizing the individual, or like all of the
Okay.
individuals that exist within any one of us, and just give it more opportunities to like be a part of stuff and sense make and kind of have financial opportunity in this kind of internet native world we're in.
Okay, this is good. The hyper individualism of our age is
Yeah.
not going to be going. It's not going back into the bottle. You've got to square the circle. You've got to let people still feel they're independent individuals, yet they're giving themselves up to something that is awesome, greater, and more powerful that carries them into the future beyond their own existence. That is what people are yearning for. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, I mean,
Ooh,
we're building something, and we've been talking a lot about how, like, giving the sense of like contributing to something bigger than yourself in this product. It isn't just like what can you as an individual get out of this product. Obviously that's a big part of it, but it's also like how can you really feel like you're contributing to something that you care about and feels bigger and feels important.
nice. That's on my reading list. Yeah, and this is a post from last year he wrote. I feel like
Yeah, it was like mid last year. You probably read it, but I may have too. But it just this I think he just
the
tweeted
graph makes sense.
this week, and I was like, that's so fucking bang on, and then read it again, and it's great.
Love it.
Nice. Yeah, let's move on to what is crypto good for. So this is a post by Steven from Collab Currency, and I think just like in this messy week of the markets, it's just such a good reminder of just like how much fucking progress this industry has made and how much is just like going so right. Kind of he writes this talking to basically it's a 20-minute. He was restricting himself to 20 minutes and just really wanted to like answer the question of like what is crypto good for, kind of targeting the institutional investor. So kind of runs through stable coins and DPIN and prediction markets and all the things that are like working really well, and ultimately like the implication that it's going to have for all of the like traditional bags of the institutional investor. And you can't not read. It was just like a really powerful overview that I think is probably all of us have people that we should send this to, but also just like a great reminder of like, we're this tech's in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been two posts from that crew this week. This one from Steven, who I think is a very underrated dude out in crypto. He's not the most public. He's not out there on Twitter all the time. But for those of us that are lucky enough to spend some time with him in conversation, he just very, very thoughtful guy. And yeah, I think it's really good to take a step back and just see the progress that's been made, because I think it's very easy to get lost in either the current hype, which is probably overblown, or like the current doomerism that I think is also overblown. So
Yeah,
I think we have some really core utilities that are out there that are clear. I mean, you've seen, the biggest acquisition of a crypto company so far was Bridge, which is a stablecoin platform.
Stable
The
coins are
arguments
like
are
outpacing like visas in like total volume settled. It's like an
and we're just
insane
at the
business
beginning
model.
there too, man. Like
Exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I I remember thinking about when PayPal launched their stablecoin back in, I think it was probably almost 2 years ago now, and I didn't get it, and now it's just the most obvious thing ever, and I
Yeah.
think we'll see a lot more doing that. Obviously, Stripe's taking a big swing at it as well. Um,
I mean, for PayPal, it makes a ton of sense. I was actually listening to Peter Thiel was on like Tetragrammaton, which is like the Rick Rubin podcast, and they talked a lot about the early days of PayPal and like the insights they had into the like future of like internet finance. And
mm,
like they were, you know obviously they didn't, this was like late 90s, like crypto didn't exist, they didn't have a concept of stable coins or any of this stuff that we now know, but they were thinking about these things and knew it would eventually somehow come to this. So I think PayPal adopting this tech from like where they started makes just so much sense.
I think this point that Sterling, if you just scroll up on the regulatory risk piece, I think this is
Mm.
probably the one that most people are still taking too much of the under on here, and I think is probably going to have the biggest impact on our space here over the next little while, regardless of where it ultimately ends up. I think maybe some people are being too optimistic, maybe we're not being optimistic enough, but it is very clear to me that anybody who's been involved in building a crypto project over the last decade, definitely over the last 4 years, has had to put it through this lens of like, am I going to be Genslered? And the feeling now is that era is over, and that is going to lead to I think just a tsunami
Yeah.
of things that are launching, and of this sort of like reflection from most founders on like, where have I bastardized this vision that I hold to fit into this sort of murky world of grayness that we had to sort of
Yeah.
navigate through. And so I think, I had another founder ask the question of like, where am I thinking have I been Genslered? And how do I remove that and push it to like the furthest extreme of really ultimately what I would do if I didn't have that as like a main filter to put
Yeah.
decisions through. And I think that many people are thinking like that right now. So
I mean, I think that's actually something I hadn't, the like second, third order effects of it, I hadn't actually like entirely internalized or like seen as clearly as I do now. Like it hasn't just been that teams haven't launched tokens. It's actually
no,
been that like they've completely like watered down or
yeah,
changed their visions because they've been scared to actually build the thing that they truly are excited by because of the regulatory uncertainty. So yeah, there's a bunch of teams now being like,
I mean,
okay, sick. Like I can, yeah,
you had your handcuffs on being able to return value to the networks or to token holders, right? Which
yeah,
is like the number one complaint about, most shit coins, right? It's just like it's pure speculation. There's no business model here. You can't evaluate them on a fundamental basis, and that's not a law of nature. That was sort of an impact of regulation. And so I think we'll start to see teams. I mean, you're seeing it already. The AI Accelerate DAO that launched yesterday, DAOs.fun are raising funds for
mm-hmm.
funds on a launch pad that charges carry. Like this is like, there's just no way you would have. I mean, my guess is they aren't based in the United States and yada yada, right? But like, if you put that to any lawyer, they're going to be like, "Yo, you're going to jail," and they're like, "Yeah, fuck it." And I think that's really what's driven so much of the progress in crypto was just not. It was sort of like a growing wave of people willing to take that next level of risk, and then there being just so many projects doing that other teams felt safe to go do it, and sort of the bar sort of moved, or the line moved, and I think we're going to see that just accelerate exponentially here in the next little while. The number of teams that are waiting for inauguration day to launch their thing, to launch their token, to launch their new model is crazy to me, absolutely crazy to me. So again, I don't
Hopefully
know
we
why
get
people
like
are bearish right now,
five
dude.
token launches on inauguration day.
I think it will be more than that.
Like on inauguration day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know of almost that number.
Really?
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see if it goes. There's a lot of things that can kind of go wrong between then and there. But yeah,
Crazy.
I mean, geez, there's five happening every minute right now. So like, what are we even talking
Yeah.
about?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, a lot of the the OpenSeas or the FX hash or the like all these kind of honestly, man,
Anybody,
I can't wait. Like, why? When are wallets going to start launching tokens? I want
dude,
like Phantom or Rainbow or MetaMask. I want one of these guys to launch a token, so they all start launching tokens, and we just start having this.
they will, man.
They will.
I
Okay,
mean,
let's go.
I think anybody who's been given a Wells notice is waiting until
Right.
inauguration day to go do
You
anything,
just
right?
rip
And
the
so,
Wells
and that's
notice
like
off
half of
and
DeFi. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, fair, nice. Okay, let's jump to
Could I use these
couple,
health agents to get through this
couple
bullshit
minutes.
I'm dealing with here? Was this gonna?
Yeah, I
Or do I
think
have to?
so. Kind of three things in here. One, I was reading through Fred Wilson's
This
like
is a great
2025
post.
great post. Kind of couple crypto topics, but covers like the breadth of tech. And I think one of them was around where is it?
An AI doctor
The
with a
doctor.
personality,
Where's the
Mr.
AI doctor?
Rogers.
Yeah, will treat millions of patients at zero cost in 2025. So there's that. Then you and I were also kind of nerding out about this idea of like Tesla for souls,
Oh God,
which
yeah.
is like the idea that you can actually. So it was Nick Camarata. I don't know how to say his name, but a post from like 4 years ago where he talks about a founder he knows that had just exited, made a bunch of money, and literally just wanted to put that money towards increasing his happiness, but there was no like easy way to go do that. So he kind of started teasing out this idea of building like a Tesla for souls. So it's like paying, taking the Tesla approach of like, starting like way up market, people who are willing to pay lots of money for, luxurious experiences or like, meaningful outcomes, and ultimately like figure out how to, meaningfully improve happiness or like a sense of meaning or, whatever these things are, and ultimately like slowly take that down market as you kind of figure out the right techniques. And someone has started building that, and I think this is like a really with like pretty interesting early results. So have people basically it's running on like a bounty system. So people are able to say, I'll pay $10,000 if someone can increase my happiness by this amount, and or like yeah,
Yeah.
improving lifelong anxiety. I want to like stop being a lifelong pushover. I want to move from like being in crisis to feeling light and hopeful. So these very like the path is uncertain, but like they have this very clear tangible outcome, and being able to like actually pay for outcomes. And so this guy's running at that. And then there was a
Well, I think this is gonna. I mean,
yeah,
the reason I sent this to you is because I'm like, oh, this could be applied to pretty much any knowledge based segment right now, right? Like, there's
yeah,
somebody out there or some buddies that are out there that have solved this before, that are the best in the world for it. And in this world of AI, your ability to go pay a significant sum to go get that sort of blueprint, and maybe in the past world it was done through coaching, consulting, courses, etc. Now it's just like, you go pay even 100 grand for 3 people to go do this sort of thing, and that is sort of
totally,
infinitely available through your users of your agent or AI tool,
yeah,
whatever. um and I
yeah,
was thinking that could be applied to crypto, to investing, to anything, right? So
one hundred
I think
percent.
that is maybe like the gold rush that we'll see over the next little while is, not just going after, not going after just sort of generally available data, but like hyper specific contextual data for these problems, and then ultimately
Yeah,
bundling those up together. So
totally.
um,
Yeah, and then the
the
last
US.
last last piece of this was so Nick's, who I met maybe like 6 months ago. He's building actual hardware products with like privacy preserving kind of like data DAO backed hardware products that are really interesting. And this week I just saw he's launching like health agents. So I think not endorsing the project by any means. It is a classic kind of tokenized like agent product right now, but I do think it's like in this world of like infinite like slot like influencer fucking slop agents and like trading agents, I think health agents just seem like a pretty like important one that you can go run at and probably like make some pretty meaningful improvements. And his insight actually came, he like built one for himself because he was dealing with some health issues, and saw the value in it, and is now kind of like building out like a swarm of these health agents. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of follow along and see how useful it is.
Can you go back to Fred's post? Because I think there's like a sneaky little one that he had there at the end that I think people are like, I think it's actually pretty interesting. Number 13, the USV librarian goes rogue,
Mm.
gets access to USV's crypto wallet, and starts making seed investments, one of which turns into a fund returner.
And that's like USV saying this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite conversations was sitting with Fred in his office, just nerding out over the stuff. I was like, how the hell did I end up here, man?
What
How did
is a
I end up here?
USV librarian like a Sterling? Can you click that?
It's their internal AI agent that they sort of feed all of their
The
meetings
decks
and
and
data
meetings and
to, and then right now it's sort of tweeting out like insights and sort of snippets from relevant conversations or discussions they have.
yeah.
USV has sort of like a very collaborative type of approach. I remember pitching them and seeing, I think there was 12 people on the call type thing, right? So it's a fairly small team, but it kind of has created this dynamic where you can get a lot of conversations sort of then the primary working mode is conversational, and then it's through those conversations and signals that kind of bubble up over multiple conversations that kind of ultimately generate their thesis and
Mm.
insights and posts, etc. So it's very well suited to this specific thing, I think, which is like capturing the collective knowledge of their curated
Mm.
smart group of people, and then um,
Yeah.
yeah, you can see how that could be used to alongside any other of these data. I think this is the interesting thing, right? You're going to have, you know, all of this work is going to be available to everybody at some level, right? Outside of whatever those unique data inputs are. And so you can imagine the USB librarian finding, that post fiat, product and being able to use it, or the
Right.
AI16Z framework, et cetera. And so, I mean, that's why I would take the over on this whole space, is you just think about the compounding effects of composability and,
Well, there's also just like
experimentation.
everyone is fucking around with it too, right?
everyone is fucking around with it too.
Everyone is fucking around with it. So,
all right, we got a lightning round piece here to finish us off.
Sterling piece.
I didn't. Oh, it was piece.
Did you say piece?
Meant,
oh, I thought.
But not as a person, but not as not as piece.
Yeah, I put a few in there.
All right. No. Yeah, I think he's trying to figure it out. There. Just
figure it out.
Just call one out. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
What?
Hey, I think have just seen a few. I think there was like Hyperfi was a project this week, and then Eliza integrated with a Roblox game. So just like being able to talk to these agents or like interact with these agents in these like metaverse environments is weird.
The metaverse.
It's
come up a few times recently too, and we haven't really seen it make a return yet in the more meta narratives. But actually, there's a few founders that we've just done a few deals that I think we actually need to get on here, because you can maybe make the argument that it is a more appropriate metaverse. Thinking about we had Cortland from USIM, which is kind of like the identity for agents and context for agents, and then Sim Cluster is the other one that we should probably talk about at some point, because
that really is an agent metaverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we should.
Cool. All right,
good call.
I need to go cough and sneeze and fall into a bed for a few minutes here. But
this reply here is just so funny. I don't know if it's become a copy pasta. I don't know if this was like the original source of it, but thanks for sharing the chart with the name cropped out. You're actually goated for that. It's probably the coolest thing I've seen in my life. You posted a crypto chart on crypto Twitter, but you cropped out the name of the token. Heroic. I love solving riddles. That's fire, bro. Thanks.
And Anson's just a king troll, man. It's so just found the nicest looking altcoin chart in crypto. Fuck you. It's so good.
And then we have a new fucking annoying.
Hey, we love maps. Well, hold on.
Okay. It's just DeFi as like a term that is like now apparently a thing.
All right, that's a good thing to end it on. We don't need to get into that weirdness. All right, we are back next week. Same time, same place, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m.
Jess
Eastern.
will be at 75% by
Oh man, I think we're gonna speed run this through here. I don't know. It's gonna be nice to be able to breathe through my nose again at some point. I want to shout out. I got some sweet merch.
Fucking Sofamon. That's sick.
Yeah, it's great. It makes me very afraid to drink coffee in it.
Is it pure pure white?
Yeah, dude.
It's hard to tell from here. Yeah, pure white.
Oh yeah, because I got
that's dangerous.
Got the filter on, but it's got it's quality gear, man. I got some keychains and some stickers. So shout out to Sofamon for the gear. But I also have to I can only do it when I've had my beard trimmed recently, because when this mustache gets a little long, it gets a little bit of coffee on it, and then I just have speckled.
Ugh.
Yeah, I'm not a gross human being whatsoever. Don't worry. No, don't worry. All right, we'll end it there. See y'all next week. Good luck out there. Stay positive. We'll be back soon, and I mean that by a crypto market perspective.
Internet Explorer.